Okay. Welcome, everybody. We are on our fifth Course in Miracles episode, and we're working from page 41 today, which is about the middle of chapter 3. And today I have Fanny and Lisa with me today to talk about all the different topics and all the different points that come up. So we're so excited. If you enjoy the show, like and follow, subscribe. Sorry, it's not like and follow, it's subscribe. And we go live every couple of weeks talking about Course in Miracles. It's a powerful book, lots of transformations. So we're starting with air and the ego. And of course, the very first line I have highlighted, the abilities you now possess are only shadows of your real strength. All of your present functions are divided and open to question and doubt. This is because you are not certain how you will use them and therefore incapable of knowledge. I think it's so, I really love this this idea of the ego and how it comes about. And, you know, we have so many different ideas or perceptions of what reality is all about. And this book has really like shifted in a huge way how I perceive reality, and really just trying to align that knowledge with higher thinking has been such you know, mind shift. Is anybody else experiencing the same thing?
I am.
Yeah.
Drastically.
Mm.
It's been really causing me to, well, just question like my whole entire reality. And yeah, it's been really an interesting process to be with it, because sometimes I can be like in the loving state, but sometimes I'm also in the fear state of like, well, what is really real and what is really true? And so I'm like kind of swaying back and forth and kind of going like thinking that nothing is real. And that's kind of an interesting thought to sit with as well.
Yeah, and I mean, it really is, because I feel the same way that really everything in physical reality, and they say in the book, like, if you're looking at it from a perspective of body, that's really not real, but in the mind, there are aspects of reality in the mind. But it's like, so then pretty much in physical reality, anything in physical reality is just not real.
Right.
Mhm.
And
What about you, Lisa? How's that been working for you?
Well, keep in mind that what your mindset is what your reality is based off of.
Yeah.
So depending on where you're at, if all you're thinking about is negative things, that becomes your reality. If you're always thinking positive, then the reality is you're open to every possibility there is.
Mm. That is the reality. Yeah. So wise.
Really.
Yeah. Okay, so line 8 in that first paragraph. So it's the last line of that paragraph. The levels created by separation cannot but conflict. This is because they are meaningless to each other. And this is something that they talk a lot about in this chapter, is the separation. Right. And they discuss like how the first big change that we go through is the separation. And that change then becomes something of a fear, because we think it's going to increase the separation and not bring it back together again. And yeah, I think that was, I think it comes a little bit later, but that's what they're talking about. The levels created by separation cannot but conflict. So, you know, these ideas that we are not one with God creates more and more conflict in our worlds.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of curious to know what you guys think when they refer to the levels. What does that mean for you? I don't feel like it's explained anywhere what the levels are, or maybe it is and I just missed it. But
Yeah. So earlier on in the book, they talk about how there is no levels, and levels are only made up by the ego.
True.
mhm. Levels of
We're all
what?
on this, we're all on the same level, basically. We're all equal.
What would
Levels
be
came
an
to
example?
play with people saying, oh, I'm disadvantaged. You're only disadvantaged. Well, that's not true. You're where you're supposed to be at the time you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Based on your perceptions.
Right.
I
So
took
levels of consciousness basically is only an illusion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there is no such according to God's mind, there is no such thing as levels. We're all one.
Hmm.
I took it like, because I always had this idea that there was like, for like 3D, 4D, 5D, like I always looked at that like they were levels. So that came crashing down when I read that, because it's like, yeah, that's true. There is no such thing as levels. There's just being,
Exactly.
and we can think more in alignment with God. And if we want to consider that a level, but it's not really, because it's available to us all the time.
Exactly.
Hmm.
It's just a matter of remembering it.
Mhm.
I guess like hearing that, what I think of is frequency and how like your frequency raises or lowers depending on like how you feel and what's going on.
Mhm.
And yeah, how I can often look at that as, or you're vibing higher than someone else, or they're vibing lower, when really, I mean, that could be true in a way, I guess, but at the same time, you're still, as you guys just said, we're still just all one anyways. So it's not a matter of levels either. Maybe just a matter
No.
of frequency. Yeah.
I know.
Mm.
The levels thing too is like, it's like popping brain cells, I think. Like, 'cause it's like, wow, okay.
The neural pathways are collapsing.
Right. Exactly.
They're collapsing and new ones are forming.
Exactly. This is it.
Yeah.
Consciousness, the level of perception, was the first split introduced into the mind after the separation, making the mind perceiver rather than creator. Consciousness is correctly identified as the domain of the ego. The ego is a wrong-minded attempt to perceive yourself as you wish to be rather than as you are. Yet you can know yourself only as you are, because that is all you can be sure of. Everything else is open to question. How does that sit? So they talk a lot in this one too about the ego and its perception. And this was what I was thinking about the other day. It's like, okay, I get that like right-minded thinking is oneness with God, but isn't that a perception too? But
Yes.
but they talk in here that it's ego. If there's any perception involved in it, it's ego. There's only knowledge, and knowledge cannot be disputed. Like right-minded knowledge cannot be disputed according to what they talk about here.
It's a matter of accepting everybody's perception of things. We don't all view everything in the same way. And we don't all have the same experiences. So just because you're starting to get into all this spirituality now and you meet somebody who's been in it for decades, depending on the knowledge that's coming to you and depending on your light and your purpose, doesn't mean that you're not as far along with that person.
Yeah. And I love what
They tell you you are.
Yeah, I love what you're saying here, because I've been doing this for a really long time, and I really love people who are just opening up, because they're just this huge wealth of like enthusiasm and knowledge, and things are just flowing so easy that that's something that over time, because our ego gets involved, I feel kind of slows down, or I don't know, slows down, or I don't know, doesn't flow quite so freely over time.
Mm.
Yeah.
And other people's input into what they perceive to be, when you're just starting out and you're going to events and you're meeting people, they kind of sort of plant seeds of what it's supposed to be, or their perception of what it's supposed to be. And you kind of get lost in all that, and you kind of don't listen to what you're feeling inside and what your inside is telling you.
Yes. Because you start to doubt yourself.
You get lost in your ego.
And that is so true. I remember that those days of like, deciding, okay, this is my path, and I'm going to go to school, and I'm going to study, and I'm going to do all of this. And going to school is like opening up and making yourself vulnerable and taking on all of this new information and new ways of looking at things. And then that raw knowledge kind of got buried a little bit underneath all of that. And then, now I have all of these skills and all of these like beautiful, wonderful things. It's not like I would take back going to school, but it's taken me a bit to like sort out a bunch of stuff to get back to that space. And still, I don't even know that I'm back to it 100%.
Mm. That's so interesting. Yeah. I often think of that, like all this knowledge, this information, well, all this information that we're taking in constantly, whether it's to try to help us to move forward or to like whatever knowledge that we're taking in, books, podcasts, all these things, like, do we really need it? And really, if it's possible for us to source like the truth, the knowledge that they talk about in this book, it's already within us. It's just a matter
But
of
the
like being
thing
able
is,
to see it.
the thing is to go in and question. That's the whole purpose of us having discussions. After discussion, you stop and you think about it. And it brings up more questions. And if you meditate on them, you'll get your answers.
Mhm.
Yeah. And other thing too is intuition is built on information that's already stored in your brain along with that connection.
And your blueprint, yeah.
And so, the more information that you can feed that goes along with what you are trying to specialize in, the more you can learn, like, physical facts in the world. You use that in a combination with, intuition or God knowledge. And, that's, I think, I always say to the people that I read for, if your mind and your spirit are in alignment, you're like, that's a really special place. It doesn't happen for everybody, and then when you are also learning and grasping and doing that kind of knowledge where you're putting in stuff that as that God energy can come in and say, oh, I can use that piece of knowledge, and we can build more information on that piece of knowledge. It's like an expansion. It's like constantly expanding and growing.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. So the next one is the third paragraph, line 6. It has to be in conflict because it is out of accord with itself. This makes it aspects strangers to each other. And this is the essence of fear-prone condition in which attack is always possible. Now, I thought that line was really interesting. Especially this makes its aspect strangers to it itself. So this is like all the many perceptions that we carry, and they don't always align with one another. You know, and one thing that I've noticed a lot, like doing the inner child work, is, you know, we have these little tiny perceptions that we took on when we were children. And we know we didn't have adults to help us process and understand and grow and move through them. And then they just, you know, stayed there. And then as we get older, you know, more and more of those perceptions, and not all of them are on the same page. And, you know, I find that that's, I think, why that stood out so much, because then when they're not on the same page, we start attacking ourselves, because one perception wants the other perception to see it their way. And so when they don't, that's like when we get into that really negative self-talk, right?
Yeah. Yeah, the concept of like all these parts that we have has been like a reoccurring theme lately. And it really aligns with like what you're just saying. Yeah, we can often feel like we're at war within ourselves.
Right.
And all these different parts. Yeah.
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 And the other thing that I find is so challenging about this is, you know, this in the spiritual industry, they'll say, oh, you just need to start talking positive to yourself. But when there's like a totally like two separate parts of yourself that don't see it the same way, you can try and talk positive all you want. It's just not gonna, like, there has to be a commune between those two parts. They have to, you know, work together and to find a common ground that they can now move together on the same path. You know, that's why I feel like maybe positive affirmations and, like, you know, sometimes they just, you can say them till you're blue in the face, they just don't, they're not as effective as they could be.
It's accepting your darkness with your light. You have to do your shadow work. You have to go through the shadow.
That's right.
Can't all be light.
Yeah.
Because there is good in the darkness also. You just got to find it.
Oh, and this is exactly it, right? When we have those dark times, those are the times when we reune with the light even stronger.
Absolutely.
Does anybody else have anything highlighted that they want to talk about?
I don't do notes, you know that.
I know. That's okay. I know that I've been doing it mostly, so I just wanted to check in and see if there's anybody else.
The
next one that I had.
I have line 8. So that paragraph 3, line 8. Like, you have every reason to feel afraid of your perceived self as you perceive yourself. And this is why you cannot escape from fear until you realize that you did not and could not create yourself. And I love like how they mention this every once in a while, this reminder that we did not create ourselves. And that is such like a good reset to bring you back to like, okay, right. My fears aren't real. My perceptions aren't real. And I didn't create myself. Yeah.
And it's through like the separation because we still have creation ability. It's just that we've cut ourselves off from the God that created us. Therefore, we don't have that creation ability anymore. And so the more that we come back and allow that energy in, the more that it can start to create in our world again. This one is, I really like this one. It's the beginning of paragraph 5. Perception always involves some misuse of mind because it brings the mind into areas of uncertainty. And that's the thing about perception, is there's always, when there's uncertainty or a fear, it's a perception. That is not truth. That has been a huge aha moment to me. And it's really helped me to open my eyes to what is working in my life. What is light? What makes me feel light in my life? And start thinking on those terms. Like when I catch myself like, oh my God, what am I going to do with this? What am I going to do with that? It's like, okay, how do I start thinking so I thrive here? And then I invite God into my mind, into my heart, into my will. And I find that next thing you know, you're just like doing things without even thinking of it. And you're like, oh, that was fun and easy.
Yes. I love that. It kind of sounds like a process of like surrendering almost. Just letting yourself be guided, and
Just
everything
flow.
becomes so much more easy when we do that. When I do, I'll speak for myself. But things just like you said, Lisa, things just flow.
And
Yeah.
it's so powerful because we spend so much time, in the rowboat trying to go against the current. And then you're just like, no, I'm just going to put my friggin' oar in this boat and take me where you want me. And it's such a powerful release, Yeah. And it's funny because I see, there's a lot of struggle, especially I feel right now because it's Christmas and, there's just so much demand on people around Christmas time. Can be very heavy. And, the struggle, we just hand it over. We don't have to know everything right now. We can just hand it over and just be like, here, deal with that for me. And that's always been powerful for me in different stages, because it's not just through reading this book that I started doing that. I started doing that. It's been quite a while now. It's like, you know what, this is overwhelming. I don't know what to do. And overwhelm has been such a key word for me lately. But like we feel overwhelmed when we don't know what to do. And when we feel like we have to be in control, it's overwhelming because we don't have the tools.
It's overwhelming to give up the control.
It can be.
We can't control everything. It's accepting that we can't control. We can only control our actions, our thoughts. We can't control others.
So
but
true.
It's in the understanding of what their reactions and actions are and their thought process.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just relinquishing that and just saying, you know what, I don't need to be in control. And just allowing God to take the reins is like such a relief at times. So then on line 3, when it chooses to be separated, it chooses to perceive. So as soon as we believe in the separation, we're perceiving. Down to line 8, the mind chooses to divide itself when it chooses to make its own levels. Again, that's another thing too that I find it's very unconscious for some people, but the idea of being superior to other people is like, you're on this higher level than somebody else when really we're all just equal. And it's so hurtful to the other people that you're interacting with when you have these perceptions that that there's a superiority, or that you're better, or that you're more advanced, or that you're, you know, really looking at the world like we're all equal is such a powerful place to be, I feel.
Hmm.
Mhm.
It's a very inspiring place to be.
It really is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty beautiful. I had a moment at Subway a couple of weeks ago where there was like just this beautiful music playing in the background. Everyone, like, there was the two workers and we were like three of us in line, and everyone just looked so happy. And we're all just like humming and smiling, and everyone's kind of separate and doing their own thing. And I just came like so present to that moment, and I was looking at everyone and it almost made me cry, because I was like, okay, like we're all the same here, we all look so different. And from looking at the exterior, everyone's got like very different lives. But then when you kind of like look through that, see past that, perceive past that, you know,
Living in the moment.
Mm-hmm. Just witnessing people, like, yeah, witnessing people for
It
what.
happens all around. We're so consumed by everything going on around us that we don't take time to notice things. Like I had an experience yesterday. Some of my customers, two of them, a couple, they live not far from me. But one of them, he doesn't say much. But I went to put a card away and I was coming back and they were coming down, and he just opened his arms like this. And I just walked in and gave him a hug. And his wife just looked at me. I said, "Do you want a hug too?" She said, "Sure." So I gave her a hug too. And we shared that moment, and people around us were just looking at us like,
Mm.
then we had a little conversation. They went on their way, but that made my day.
That's so beautiful. And it's when you can recognize that everybody is raising in vibration together.
Mhm.
Such a beautiful place to be, Yeah, I love it.
Of those moments.
Okay, so paragraph 6, line 4, spirit, which knows, could not be reconciled with this loss of power because it is incapable of darkness. Now, they say this so often that our miscreation, so our perceptions, cannot be known to God. It is not in his awareness. And I say his, but it's not in the awareness. God's awareness is only in light. So when we're like struggling and suffering and all of that, it's like not even real, and it's not even clocked on God's radar.
Exactly.
And I feel like that's why when we like hand it all over to God, it just disappears because it can't.
Right.
But it's our perception that we're struggling. Are we really struggling? Because you're still physically fine. You're still physically. It's a matter of where your mind goes at the time.
Mm.
Are you looking for the lesson? Or are you just saying, well, why is this happening to me now?
Right. Are you living in the poor me, or are
Yeah.
you living? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Are you playing victim?
It's almost like we have this sense of entitlement that this shouldn't be happening to us, right?
Right.
Like, okay, well, that's happening to you, and so what? Like, not to say that like, hey, shitty things and hard things happen, but we make it so wrong.
I really love this, because expectations, like I wrote a big thing on this last night on how expectations are the assholes of our society.
Mhm.
It's this idea that it's our expectations. When our expectations do not get met, we get angry. We feel like we need to speak up. There's just so much attached to expectations.
Mhm.
And you know, expectations are also like, you know, when one part of your personality is not meeting the expectations of another, then you're like telling yourself off, and you're, you know, there's all kinds of like negative self-talk. Um, and those are all perceptions.
They're the easiest things to have, expectations.
Oh,
Like,
right.
ooh.
And sometimes we don't even know we have them.
Right?
Exactly.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for those moments when like the light switch comes back on and it's like, holy shit, like what kind of like spiral was I into? And then you can kind of like take a step back and become aware, you know, for a time being, and then go back down the spiral for a little bit and come back out.
Like going in the eye of the storm just to come back out better.
Gosh, yes.
Right. Going in the vortex, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so paragraph 6, line 6, thereafter, spirit is perceived as a threat because light abolishes darkness merely by showing you it is not there. Truth will always overcome error in this way. This cannot be an active process of correction because, as I've already emphasized, knowledge does not do anything.
This cannot be an active process of correction because, as I have already emphasized, knowledge does not do anything.
It just takes its rightful place on the throne, I guess.
I just picture like a rock just kind of like falling and it's like, boom, that's that. Oh.
I thought that was such an interesting way to say that. And truth does always overcome. Like if you go speak to somebody who's, you know, had a big long life and they're at the end, you know, they spit out truths like, yeah, I wish I would have known those things earlier. Like, you know, it's the relationship. It's not, you know, the things that you achieve. It's the what you're leaving behind in the hearts behind you. And, you know, like those are the real truths of life. So it's very interesting about how truth always wins in the end. I remember when I was younger, when I first started opening up spiritually, like truth was part of my vocabulary on a daily basis. Like I wanted to know truth so bad. Like I was on a hunt,
Mm.
you know? Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to say anything else about that?
Not about that specifically, but I highlighted like line 4 and 5 just before that.
Okay.
It says like spirit which knows could not be reconciled. Could not be reconciled with this loss of power because it is incapable of darkness. And this makes the spirit almost inaccessible to the mind and entirely inaccessible to the body.
Yeah.
It's so interesting to sit with.
That's what I was talking about is the body. If we're focused from the body point of view, that's like completely not even part of reality at all.
Completely irrelevant.
Irrelevant.
They're
And
completely separate.
well, I don't know if I don't think it's separate because it is the physical manifestation of your mind.
Mm-hmm.
And spirit which knows could not be reconciled with this loss of power because it is incapable of remedies. So this makes spirit almost inaccessible to the mind and entirely. So as long as with this loss of power. Sorry, I'm trying to understand this.
Yeah. And
Spirit
I think
doesn't
maybe
look
the
to be
reason
in
why I highlighted.
power.
What was that?
spirit doesn't look to be in power. It just is.
So if we
Yeah.
go and read the line right before that one, the interpretive function of perception, a distorted form of creation, then permits you to interpret the body as yourself in an attempt to escape from the conflict you have induced. Right? So it's saying as soon as there's conflict happening in the mind or in your perception, the spirit cannot live there.
Yeah.
No, the spirit doesn't live in ego.
No, so as soon as there's a misperception, interpret the body yourself as
That's
and
the ego going on a power trip.
exactly. And you interpret your body as as yourself in an attempt to escape from the conflict you have induced. Spirit, which knows, could not be reconciled with the loss of power because it is incapable of darkness. So when we're in a state of misperception and emotion and upheaval, spirit can't be part of that. It can't get in. It can't get in. It won't get into the body, and it won't get into the mind. It is only when we can like clear and like hand it over can spirit then come in. That's my interpretation of it.
Mm-hmm. As I heard you say that, it's what came up was like as soon as you acknowledge spirit, you automatically like look away from like you can't focus on light and on darkness at the same time, right?
Oh
So if we're
yeah.
stuck in the rat wheel over there with our ego, and we realize and we snap out of it and we come back to spirit and acknowledge it, like all of that kind of can go away. Well, it does if you look on the other side, you know. But
Absolutely.
you can't both.
That's right.
And it comes in the mind, and I like where that's where they say like spirit is almost inaccessible to the mind, but entirely inaccessible to the body.
Mm-hmm.
There's like that slight difference.
Mm-hmm. It makes me wonder, like, what does our being look like to God? Right? Like, I just visualize this like light. That's it.
That's what we are, light.
Exactly. Like,
Yeah.
there is no physical, it's not even clocked in, it's like just this light and
Mhm.
how much you're connecting to the light.
Yeah. We think.
I think.
That's what it is.
That's right.
Yeah. We'll know someday. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Exactly. Okay, so then if we go down to paragraph 7, by uniting my will with that of my creator, I naturally remember spirit and its real purpose. I cannot unite your will with God's for you, but I can erase all misperceptions from your mind if you will bring it under my guidance. I love that.
Mm.
And that's just, again, opening up to misperception and then bringing it back into alignment and recognizing that, you know, all of those beings are taking part in our everyday reality.
Either.
What were you going to say?
No, I'm talking to the dog.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
He came to upset my phone.
Oh, I like this one. So this is on page 44 and line 12 at the top of the page. Many are called, but few are chosen. Should be all are called, but few choose to listen.
Mm. I
So-
highlighted that with hearts.
Oh, I did too. I'm like, oh my gosh, highlight, underline, because yeah, so true. Like
Yeah.
we all are here to fulfill the calling, and it's up to us to choose. That's what I was saying earlier. Not all of us have a mind for it. You know,
Mm.
we're really lucky if we have a physical mind that wants to drive for spirit.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah. And I like this one too. God knows you only in peace, and this is your reality. We are meant to live in peace. It is our right to live in peace.
Right.
And we like just so easily hand it over to these experiences that,
Right.
challenge us.
It's like Lisa said earlier, how it's like our blueprint, right? I love that word when it comes to like knowing what we truly are.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Mm.
And then I have said that the abilities, so now we're on Beyond Perception, page 44. I have said that the abilities you possess are only shadows of your real strength, and that perception, which is inherently judgmental, was introduced only after separation. No one has been sure of anything since.
Uh,
Oh,
yeah.
it makes me giggle, but it's so true. True. And then they talk,
Yeah.
they talk again about the tree of life, which it'll come soon, but we just get so distorted on all of these belief systems and what is God? Like, we have we have several types of religions all trying to tell us what God is in their own manner, and there's been wars over this because everybody is right in their own mind.
They're all in their ego. They're
Unfortunately.
not operating from light.
Mm.
And it's not saying that there aren't bits of light in each one. It's just, yeah,
It's their perception of what is right and wrong.
exactly.
Right.
And what this has done to people over the generations is distorted this idea of what God is to the point of being fearful to believe in it. And I guess that's part of the game, right? When you're pushed into a corner and there's only you and God left, who else is there? There's nobody else. You have to open up. Like everybody's going to come to that. You have to open it up to it sometime. Truth always wins.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, these distorted ideas of God, it damages people to look for other means outside of themselves to fix the problems instead of looking at the God within.
Mm-hmm.
It's a head shaker.
It is.
Yeah.
And I guess what came up too is like, how do we even know that to be true? Like, yeah.
And we can't.
We can't.
All we can do is,
It's the belief in the unknown.
yeah, and trust what's in here. That's it. That's all we got.
Yeah.
And like reading like this book, like the other day, I was can't remember exactly what I was doing or even what I was going through, but I was like, screw A Course in Miracles. It can't always be light, right? Like it can't. Like I have other things to deal with. It can't always be light.
It's a balance.
It is a balance.
It's like the sun and the moon.
Yes.
The sun comes up, the sun goes down, but when the sun goes down, the moon comes up.
That's right.
Yes. And
But the moon is light in the darkness, is it not?
It is.
Yeah.
It really is.
It's like I said earlier, I think Lisa said it about how like when we look at our darkness, like there's a reason for it. There's a purpose for it. So
There's a lesson in it.
we can't always be in light, and sometimes we need to be in the darkness, and that's exactly where we need to be.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to go there for a reason. You have to emerge from that.
Mm-hmm.
And that is exactly so. Yeah, and I totally feel like that is the truth. We need to go through the dark in order to become closer to the light.
That's the only way to grow.
Like, how can you even know light if you don't go through dark?
Yeah. Yeah. Contrast is like one of the greatest, well, it's a gift.
Mm.
Right?
It's a miracle.
It's the whole purpose of being, if like that's the whole reason of being human, why we're here. I feel without contrast, what would there be?
Well, and from my understanding, when I listen to Dolores Cannon, which twists my mind in every which way sideways, but they talk about a lot in there about how human beings and the emotions that we experience are very unique to like our race, that a lot of other beings don't have that. And that's why, like, you know, when you see these other beings, that there's no, I will call it maybe compassion, but it's not that they don't have compassion, because they're very loving beings, but they don't have this, I don't know. Every time I think of like other beings, it's like humans perceive them as being empty because they don't have the huge vocabulary of emotion that we're used to reading from other people.
Right.
And they live in the state of love, not in the emotion of love, which is different.
I like that. Yeah. Oh,
What do you have? Your wheels are turning, Lisa.
Huh?
I said, I see your wheels are turning.
Yes, my wheels are turning. But a lot of these beings do share their emotions. It's just they're all telepathic, so they all know
Yes, exactly.
the other emotions automatically.
Yeah, they don't communicate the same way that we do. And what
No.
one knows, the other one knows instantly. There's no,
Exactly.
you know, they live more like the state of oneness than human beings do.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I was just talking about that yesterday, how it would be such a cool experiment to do, to put us like a few of us in a room with the agreement that like no one is talking, no one is even like looking at each other, and you just try to see if you can communicate with one another with just your energy.
It's
Yeah.
possible.
It is possible.
I've had a few moments with my daughter where, yeah, I would think something and then she would say it after.
That happens to me quite often, where I like am thinking something and either somebody else says it or somebody else, I'll say it and somebody will be like, oh my God, I was just thinking that. Like, that happens a lot.
Yeah.
It's just something over time. You're just like, yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to steal your thought on you. Like, what's my intention? Sometimes. Okay, where were we?
Paragraph 2, I think.
To beyond on page 44.
Yeah, beyond perception.
All right, and then I have paragraph 3. In this sense, when your behavior is unstable, you are disagreeing with God's idea of your creation. Okay, so this brings up for me, you know, I get these like, okay, Linda, you need to eat this way, or you need to do this thing, or you need to, and when I don't follow through, it's like I'm ignoring God's inspiration. And it always comes with some kind of consequence later.
So when you don't follow through with the voice of you need to eat a certain way, you need to like be a certain way. Yeah.
Or do like, if there's something like an impulse, like do this now and I don't do it. Or sometimes it's buy this. And then later on, it's like, oh, fuck, I didn't need it then, but now I need it like an hour later. You know, like that little intuitive voice,
Mhm.
you know, that tells you to like do this. And you're like, oh, I don't need to do that.
Right. Those nudges, those impulses, like divine inspiration or divine guidance, or however you want to call it, like it's coming up for a reason, and to trust it, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
I feel like that's like a muscle built, right? To like cultivate the trust in those nudges. and learning to like lean in and to take action on them. Yeah.
It really is like a
I can
muscle.
definitely relate to that. It is. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so funny how, like, recently I noticed more and more, because I feel like, the path that I'm on right now was necessary, and I wasn't listening before. And that's why everything had to break down and put me on this path, because this is where I'm supposed to be, but I wasn't getting here as long as I was over there.
Right.
And I knew a year ago that I was supposed to get off that path and get on this one, but I didn't listen. So yeah, that was a testament of we're kicking you right in the ass. It wasn't like that, but it was literally like, okay, you're done there. Poof, now you're here.
You're not listening. We're going to pull you out of there, whether you like it or not.
Exactly. So it's like now I have no other choice but to listen. Okay, so there's this one too. The fundamental question you continually ask yourself cannot properly be directed to yourself at all. You keep asking, what is it you are? This implies that the answer is not only one you know, but is also one that is up to you to supply. I love that one. We decide who we are.
Free will.
Yeah. We can carry out God's free will for us. Like we can, use our free will to follow what God is telling us and guiding us to be or do. Or we can nod and lose our.
Sorry, it sounds like it's saying the opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like it says, like, so this implies that the answer is not only one we know, but that it's up to us to supply. Yet we cannot perceive ourselves correctly. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So is it really up to us to decide? Like, I know what you mean, like in a way we do, but are you guys serious, or is it just me that's perceiving this differently?
It means following your intuition, not your ego in that matter. Because if you're following your intuition, you will find the answer. If you're following your ego, you won't.
Not be properly directed to yourself at all. You keep asking, what is it that you are? Because it kind of sounds like we shouldn't even be asking that question to begin with.
Right.
Exactly.
Because
You're supposed to trust.
Yeah, you have no image to perceive. There is your God. So, but your ego has created all of these perceptions that you're something other than God. So it's still up to you to decide to live in alignment with God.
Yeah.
Yeah. Knowing is not open to interpretation. You may try to interpret meaning, but this is always open to error because it refers to the perception of the meaning, of meaning. Yeah. Yeah. That's a really good point, Funny. It's like, and I mean, even when you read like the when I was doing my Zen cards all the time, they talk about like losing all image, losing all ideas of identification and all, and just be, because it's in that being, that space that allows God to be a part of your experience. And that's true identity, or like that's the true identity, is the God.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think we're getting towards the end of our hour. Anybody want to share anything last at the end here?
3 minutes. My wheels are spinning and
I know.
want to open it up and go down that rabbit hole. Just when you said that line about like just being, right? And how there's so much that comes with like really choosing to embody that state. And yeah, oh, okay, yeah, we don't need to go.
No, but even what you were saying about, that moment when you were at Subway and you recognize like everybody is different, but we're all just sitting in this state of happiness with one another, like kind of basking in with this song that's playing in the background. And like, like you just recognized God in every single person that was present in that moment, along with yourself. And spending more of those moments, like recognizing more of those moments, recognizing more of that space of love and light, that everybody is from higher frequencies. It's not, there's nobody chosen for it.
I have words actually for what I was trying to say. Things that kind of like sparked up something. It's almost like by just being, like that brings up the conditioning that just being is enough. Because when I think of just being, I think, well, okay, if I'm just being, I'm not doing anything.
But you are.
And
because being is being present in the moment.
Right. And it's doing exactly what we're here to do. If, that's interesting. So there's like that conditioning of like doing. And not only physical action, just like with our words, things that we need to be saying all the time instead of just, or not instead, I should say, but versus when we're really just being present.
Yeah.
What's coming up. Yeah.
Yeah. The word being is such a powerful word, yet it's,
the simplest thing.
The simplest thing. It really is. And in being, you'd be surprised at how much action gets taken when you're just being. It may not be action that you planned out, like sometimes it's just like, boom, it's happening. And you're like, oh, look at this. Pretty cool. And usually being in that moment, like it's easy, things flow. It's not like you're dredging up a mudslide.
You don't even have to think about it.
You don't even think about it.
I feel like that's our true, like natural, authentic state. And that's like, we're really embodying the when they talk about the miracle worker here in this book, like that's being in that role, I feel. Because we're all sparked and move and inspired by different things, right? For a reason. We like,
it's so true. It's so true. And like they talk in the book about there's not going to be any more time at certain points. And then it's like, that's such a boggleness to my mind. It's like, okay, so then when I'm supposed to meet with Fanny, it's just like, she's going to know and I'm going to know when that's going to happen without any kind of appointment set. And then it's just going to happen.
Great. It's amazing.
It's amazing.
How many times do you just walk into the coffee shop and like your friend just happens to be sitting there and they're like either just reading a book and all of a sudden you sit down and you have that like 2-hour hangout meeting, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Or how many times somebody just like, you think of them and then an hour later or 2 hours later, they call you and you're like, oh, so those little miracle moments.
Right.
Well,
Mm.
thank you so much, ladies. Of course, another beautiful conversation of the Course in Miracles. I love this book. I love these conversations. Anybody watching, if you want to see more of these, please subscribe to the channel. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Bye,